On March 20, 2020, in the city of Alua, Portugal, 20-year-old Diogo Gonalves went to meet a girl he admired greatly. Unfortunately, he had no foresight on how this seemingly romantic evening would culminate. The picturesque resort town of Albufeira, noted as one of the premier destinations in the Algarve region of southern Portugal, was D's birthplace in 1999. As an only child in a modest yet industrious family whose livelihood hinged primarily on the fluctuations of tourism, Diogo was regarded by his parents as an exemplary son. Acquaintances described him as decent, responsible, hardworking, and reliable. Additionally, he was an outgoing young man who cherished the company of friends and family. Diogo pursued his high school education in his hometown and subsequently embarked on a computer science degree. To support his academic aspirations and contribute to household expenses, he began working at McDonald's at the age of 16 in 2015. By the time he was 17 and still employed with the renowned company, Diogo's life took an unforeseen and tragic turn. One day, his father suffered a stroke, which led to him being in a vegetative state. The media reported extensively on this event, compounding their troubles that same year, as Diogo and his mother were grappling with this new challenge. Another misfortune struck him hard. His mother, his unwavering supporter, was struck by a vehicle on her way to work at the mall where she was employed as a cleaner. She was dragged several meters by the car and fell into a ditch. Sadly, she succumbed to her severe injuries. Even though the driver fled the scene initially, law enforcement officials were able to identify and bring him to justice. While awaiting legal proceedings against those responsible for both his parents' dire situations, it became necessary for Diogo's father to be placed in a specialized medical facility for appropriate care. His maternal aunt, concerned about his precarious circumstances, invited him to stay with her. However, due to irreconcilable differences that emerged after weeks together, cohabitation proved unfeasible. Subsequently, confiding in a friend about these challenges led to an offer from his friend's parents. They provided him accommodation within their residence located in Alua's Algarve neighborhood. This proximity alleviated some distress for Diogo, as living amongst familiar faces brought some semblance of comfort during such trying times. Despite being quite young, Diogo showcased remarkable skill in handling challenging situations through patience and optimism. At 18, he completed his degree in computer technology in 2017 and secured a 6-month internship at Vila Vita Park, a renowned 5-star tourist hotel. His performance there was noteworthy, leading the executives to offer him a technician role. In 2018, Diogo decided to accept this position, resigning from his job at a fast food restaurant chain where he had worked for nearly a year and attained the role of duty manager. He embarked on a new chapter of his life, anticipating numerous opportunities that would aid his progress after the difficulties he had faced. As Diogo began to settle into his new job and look towards a brighter future, he decided to purchase a car. He formed good relationships with colleagues, including Maria Malver, a 19-year-old security guard at the hotel, who particularly caught his attention. Like Diogo, Maria also came from humble beginnings and had encountered significant challenges. Her mother struggled with mental health issues. While her father abandoned the family early on, she never reconnected with him. Maria was passionate about martial arts and practiced karate. While she aspired to become a police officer, her application was rejected due to her tattoo. This setback led her to enroll in training at a security company specializing in various private security sectors. Diogo openly expressed his admiration for Maria from the start, but she did not reciprocate his feelings and was rather aloof towards him. Fabio Acosta, a close friend of Diogo's, mentioned that Diogo was infatuated with Maria. According to Fabio, Diogo's dedication to her was intense enough that he declined an attractive job offer from the Sheraton hotel chain in Lisbon because he did not wish to be separated from her. Additionally, when Maria was working her shift, Diogo often brought meals for her. As time went on, they became almost inseparable. Observers frequently assumed they were a couple, despite there being no romantic relationship between them. Maria confided in Diogo that she wanted no romantic involvement, as she had recently ended a toxic relationship with a naval officer, but simultaneously gave him mixed signals. Despite this ambiguity, Diogo never abandoned hope for a future with her, and continuously sought ways to be near her and show his affection through various gestures aimed at pleasing her. One day, Diogo was deeply disappointed when he stumbled upon a video on social media showing Maria kissing another girl on the lips. He felt upset because he believed she should have informed him that she did not like men and that this was why they would never be together. Fabio, Diogo's best friend, attempted to calm him by explaining that girls sometimes do this, but Diogo remained unconvinced. He insisted that she had misled him and that this was why she had rejected his romantic advances. Despite this disappointment, Diogo and Maria stayed friends. She continued to accept his gifts and invitations for dates. Many times, Diogo offered to walk her home, but she always mentioned that her roommate had a jealous boyfriend and did not want another man entering her apartment. Time went by, and in December 2019, Diogo learned he would finally receive compensation for his mother's death, which happened 3 years prior. After receiving the amount of €70,000, he decided it was time to purchase a house so he wouldn't need to keep paying rent. Diogo then shared this exciting news with his friend Maria. Shortly thereafter, Maria resigned from her job at the hotel. She said she could no longer tolerate her co-workers' comments about the supposed relationship between her and Diogo. Additionally, she explained that she wanted more time with her mother, who required significant attention due to a mental illness. Initially, there was no reason to doubt her explanations. However, subsequent events hinted that her decision to quit might have been driven by more sinister motives. This is where Mariana Fona comes into play, a 20-year-old nurse at the hospital who had a stable relationship with Maria. The two young women lived together in Mariana's parents' home since they were not financially secure enough to live independently and enjoy their relationship fully. Maria found herself in this situation when she learned about the significant sum of money Diogo would receive. Interestingly, from that point onward, Maria started drawing closer to Diogo. It appears likely that Maria shared this information with Mariana together. They plotted to deceive him and gain access to his bank account details with the intention of stealing his compensation money. One day, after Diogo had repeatedly refused, Maria informed the young man that she wished to spend a romantic evening with him. This proposal was a surprising gift for the 20-year-old, who found it hard to believe his ears. After waiting for so long, the idea of being close to the girl he loved made him ecstatic. Their rendezvous was scheduled for Friday evening, March 20th, 2020. Diogo was elated and had no doubts about what might have led Maria to change her mind so abruptly. Although Maria and Mariana shared different accounts of what transpired that day, the following details are based on media reports and official information. Upon Diogo's arrival, Mariana offered him orange juice that she had brought herself. Unbeknownst to him, the drink contained a hidden ingredient: 3 ampoules of DIM, a central nervous system drug with anesthetic and sedative effects. Mariana reportedly proposed using this substance, which she had stolen from the hospital where she worked. The girl's plan entailed sedating Diogo to access his banking information and manipulate his fingers to unlock his phone. Mariana allegedly waited in a car outside while her friend executed their plan. She sent multiple texts to Maria, checking if the drug had taken effect, since it was acting slower than anticipated. Inside, tensions rose as Diogo grew increasingly unnerved, without understanding what was happening. Attempting to calm him, Maria promised an erotic dance, but insisted on tying him to a table first. After several minutes in this restrained position, Diogo panicked and pleaded with Maria to release him. Her demeanor turned aggressive as they began to struggle. Using her martial arts skills, she overpowered Diogo, bringing him down and restraining his neck with her arms, yet cutting off his air supply. According to Mariana's account, Maria eventually summoned her into the apartment. Mariana found Diogo on the floor and questioned Maria about deviating from their original plan, merely stealing his keys and taking his money. Upon discovering that Diogo was unresponsive, the nurse administered resuscitative measures. Upon awakening in a highly agitated state, he attempted to attack Mariana. Perhaps recognizing another conspirator against him, he tried defending himself. Reacting to Diogo's aggressive response towards her friend, Maria intervened by grabbing him from behind once more, bringing him down and constricting his neck again. In light of these events, both women's actions have been scrutinized as part of ongoing investigations rooted in available evidence and testimonies provided by those involved. Diogo's life tragically ended at the hands of the girl he loved. His body lay in the living room of Maria and Mariana's house, where they immediately set about their planned robbery. They first cut off his thumb and index finger to unlock his phone, access a mobile payment app, and transfer money. This process took several days due to a daily transaction limit. The crime occurred just as COVID-19 restrictions began, with remote working becoming commonplace. Diogo was supposed to go to work the next day. The girls attempted to prevent his co-workers from noticing his absence and raising concerns. They sent a message from Diogo's phone to an IT colleague, stating Diogo could not go to work and needed a replacement. This message raised suspicion because Diogo wasn't known for making such requests at short notice. When asked if everything was all right, Diogo's phone responded affirmatively. Conversations between this hotel employee and others continued through Friday into part of Saturday, but the messages increasingly seemed uncharacteristic of Diogo. One of these messages reached Diogo's supervisor, stating Diogo wouldn't return to work as he had met a woman from France and would be moving in with her. This struck the boss as odd, since Diogo was known for his reliability and wouldn't abruptly leave his job. Seeking clarification, the supervisor tried calling Diogo but received no answer. Another message claimed Diogo wasn't in a condition for phone calls. The supervisor responded that hearing directly from Diogo would be reassuring. The reactions from Diogo's loved ones to these impersonated messages led Maria and Mariana to adjust their strategy regarding his disappearance. They decided to fabricate a scenario suggesting that Diogo had taken his own life and then plotted to dismember his remains for disposal. Maria later confessed their plan was inspired by the TV series Dexter, which depicts a forensic expert who eliminates criminals while erasing traces of his crimes by dismembering victims. These actions highlight how communication breakdowns and erratic behaviors can raise suspicions and lead authorities closer to uncovering criminal deeds, even when efforts are made to mislead those searching for answers. After executing their reprehensible plan, they placed Diogo's body in trash bags, storing them in the trunk of their vehicle. They then proceeded to an ATM and a shopping mall. Security cameras captured them hugging and laughing. Upon returning to their residence, they began the gruesome task of dismembering body. Diogo's torso was eventually placed in a black bag, with the remaining parts disposed of in a container. During these events at Mariana's parental home, Diogo's friends initiated a campaign to report him missing and contacted the authorities. The authorities waited the mandatory 48 hours before officially declaring him missing. Subsequently, the girls departed from the house. Maria drove Diogo's car towards the cliff near Cabo de San Vicente Lighthouse, with Mariana following in her own car. At approximately 2 p.m., Mariana discarded Diogo's torso off the cliff, abandoning his car nearby to create an impression that Diogo had ended his own life. Unfortunately for them, Maria did not anticipate that instead of falling into the sea, the remains would become lodged on a rock. The girls then departed together in Mariana's car. They drove approximately 7 kilometers to the Pego do Inferno waterfall in Tavira, where they disposed of what remained of Diogo into the water. Shortly after this incident, Diogo's vehicle was discovered in a parking lot near Cabo de San Vicente Lighthouse. Reports indicated that 2 laptops were found within the car. Forensic police arrived promptly and conducted thorough land and sea searches. This led to the discovery of a young man's torso, partially enveloped by a black garbage bag, near one location along the coast. Simultaneously, at another coastal site, Pego do Inferno, a French couple made a horrifying discovery: Diogo's head. After extensive efforts from law enforcement officers, his hands and feet were also recovered. The investigators handling this case found several aspects puzzling, considering that Diogo appeared to be an unassuming individual who avoided unsavory company based on collected data about him. Further probing by authorities revealed that Diogo had received significant compensation following his mother's death. They uncovered substantial transfers from Diogo's account to Maria's account through monetary transactions, tracking methodically carried out by investigators. The detective's next step was to locate Maria and clarify why Diogo's funds ended up with her. The girl then attempted to persuade the police that she had killed the young man because he was attempting to abuse her. She asserted this as the reason she left the hotel before the incident. However, an examination of the text messages between the victim and Maria revealed that this was not true. She and Diogo had grown closer after Maria stopped working. During her first interaction with the officers, Maria claims sole responsibility for planning and executing the actions leading to the fatal shooting. She emphasized that Mariana had no involvement in the crime. However, Mariana's account contradicted Maria's claims. The nurse stated that Maria confided in her a plan to steal Diogo's money, but intended to take his life as well. She wanted him to suffer enough to disclose his bank account password. The collected evidence proved sufficient for convicting both girls. Investigators had phone records, the deceased's cell phone, and ATM surveillance footage at their disposal. Maria and Mariana were arrested on April 1, 2020, and appeared in court in June of that year. The judge meticulously followed Maria's recounting of events, where she insisted on pleading guilty and denied any involvement of Mariana. According to her version, Diogo's body remained for 2 days in a car parked in a garage, and it was there that his remains were dismembered when Mariana's family slept. After hearing Mariana's detailed account of events, the judge repeatedly asked about her whereabouts during the dismemberment executed with surgical precision at the joints. The courtroom's attention turned towards Mariana. She anticipated these questions and stated that since everyone knew she worked at a hospital, they assumed she dismembered the corpse herself. To clarify matters further, she suggested using internet resources for verification. Given the seriousness of this cold, calculated, reckless, and brutal crime, both individuals received custodial sentences, as determined by the judge. A few months later, on February 24, 2021, the trial began. During her testimony on February 26, 2021, Maria confirmed that she initially wanted revenge on Diogo for the alleged attempted violence, but stated she did not intend to take his life. The defendant admitted her intent was to humiliate the victim and verified that her friend had no relationship with the young man and was unaware of the alleged attempted violence. Maria also asserted that her actions were not motivated by compensation. The girls appeared in court together, however, they did not look at each other throughout the trial. Rumor suggests that after their arrest and subsequent jail time, they decided to end their relationship. The trial included testimony from several witnesses, including forensic expert Teresa Costa. The expert explained that the amount of dipum found in Diogo's blood was significantly less than expected from 3 ampoules, suggesting either Diogo had not taken the prescribed dose or had ingested it many hours before his death. On April 27, 2021, the court issued its decision. Maria was found guilty of aggravated murder, accessory to desecration of a body, robbery, unlawful access, and fraud. Additionally, she was convicted of carjacking and possession of an illegal weapon. She received a sentence of 25 years in prison and was ordered to pay Diogo's father €265,000 in compensation. Mariana was acquitted of murder but found guilty of desecrating a corpse and complicity in fraud. For this, she received a sentence of 4 years in prison. She was released because none of the offenses involved pretrial detention until final sentencing. The court concluded that Mariana's attempt to revive Diogo demonstrated she did not intend to kill him. In reaching this decision, the judge took into account Mariana's confession, where she expressed full responsibility for her actions. However, this verdict was not well received by the Portuguese public, who viewed Mariana as equally culpable in the heinous crime against Diogo as Maria. Following the verdict, Mariana exited through the back door, where her father, present at all hearings, awaited her. Both refrained from making any statements to reporters. The case of Anna Walsh, a horrific event in the basement of a family home. For over a year now, an investigation has been ongoing into the mysterious disappearance of a young woman and mother of 3 children, Anna Walsh. In January of the previous year, the case was reclassified as a brutal crime, although the body of the missing 39-year-old American woman of Serbian descent has yet to be found to this day. Her husband, Brian Walsh, who had previously encountered legal issues for fraud, was arrested on charges related to her disappearance. No one could have imagined that this individual could be responsible for ending the life of the mother of his sons. It's noteworthy that the Walsh family appeared to be quite prosperous, successful, and happy on the surface. Moreover, the couple was not in want, living in a luxurious home, and could afford anything they desired. However, few were aware of what happened behind the closed doors of this large and beautiful house. Even the person closest to Anna, her mother, did not realize the deadly danger her daughter was in. Interestingly, Brian managed to woo Anna away from her previous husband years ago in a rather unique manner. So unique, in fact, that the woman and her first husband even sought police protection from harassment and threats. Nevertheless, she eventually left with Walsh, to whom she was married for over 7 years. But what happened that led the family head to decide to rid himself of his wife? And what did he do to her? Who was Anna Walsh? Anna Lubicic, who later became known as Anna O'Neill following her first marriage, was born on April 18, 1983, in the Serbian capital of Belgrade. Here, she spent her formative years, growing up with her younger sister in a cultured family. Her academic journey led her to the 5th Belgrade Gymnasium, where she excelled as one of its standout students. Pursuing higher education, Anna attended the esteemed Belgrade Research University, the most historic and expansive university in Serbia. Her academic pursuits included a deep dive into foreign languages, culminating in a master's degree in French language and literature. At 22, with her diploma in hand, Anna sought broader horizons and career prospects in the United States, a move fully supported by her family. In 2005, she embarked on her American dream. Settling in the U.S., Anna aimed to further her education in hospitality management. She took on administrative roles at prestigious hotels, notably the Inn at Little Washington in Virginia, a part of the elite Relais and Chateau hotel circle. Anna's warmth, approachability, and sense of duty saw her swiftly ascend the professional ladder, garnering respect from her peers and supervisors alike. Multilingual and adept at resolving conflict, her innate charm and charisma allowed her to form connections with ease. Beloved by colleagues and blessed with a burgeoning circle of friends, Anna seized every chance to shine. She became a U.S. citizen, retaining her Serbian nationality, enjoyed a high income, and invested in her own property and car. Her travels broadened her horizons further, and her career flourished, leading to a promotion to senior manager. Anna's intelligence, beauty, slender frame, and radiant smile attracted many admirers. During her tenure at the Wheatley Hotel in Lenox, Massachusetts, she found love with Marcus O'Neill, the establishment's head chef. Their romance led to marriage in 2009, and Anna adopted her husband's last name. Who is Brian Walsh? Brian Paul Walsh was born in July 1975 in Boston, Massachusetts, into a well-known, affluent, and respected family. His father, Thomas Walsh, was a distinguished neurologist who worked at one of the state's leading hospitals, where he headed a department and also taught at a prestigious medical university. From a young age, Brian was the quintessential spoiled child, luxuriating in wealth and never knowing the word no. He attended one of the best private schools, wore expensive branded clothing, and lived a life of ease. Despite his parents' efforts to provide him with the best education, after finishing school, he failed to stay enrolled in any of the 3 prestigious colleges his father had arranged for him to attend. Nevertheless, Brian was far from foolish. His peers remembered him as cunning, calculating, and quite aggressive. He always found a way to get what he wanted one way or another. Brian was known for his extraordinary, even obsessive desire for money and a luxurious lifestyle, and he was extremely reluctant to part with his funds. In his youth, he often borrowed money from friends, only to never return it. During his college years, he would invite friends to the most luxurious restaurants, then, through various schemes and manipulations, ensure that others always paid his share of the bill. For many years, Brian was estranged from his father, up until the elder Walsh's death in 2018. The rift in their relationship began after the ungrateful son fraudulently withdrew nearly $1 million from Dr. Thomas Walsh's personal account and simply disappeared with the money. The father did not report his son to the police and even tried to persuade him to return the money voluntarily. When Brian refused, Thomas ceased all communication with him. By the time of this egregious theft incident, Brian's parents had long been divorced, and his father had another family and decided to permanently erase his eldest heir from his life and his will. However, when Thomas passed away, Brian immediately made his presence known and even filed a lawsuit, claiming that the will left behind was forged by the doctor's widow and younger children to cheat him out of his rightful inheritance. Naturally, he was unable to prove anything or receive any part of the estate. Moreover, those who knew Brian described him as greedy, malevolent, and quite cruel, with a tendency towards violence and an inability to control his emotions. He achieved everything by force, and during bouts of anger, became dangerous. According to some reports, in the late 2000s, Walsh underwent treatment in a psychiatric clinic where he attempted to curb his bursts of rage, and it was then that he was officially diagnosed with sociopathy, a truly peculiar love story. The future spouses met in 2014, a time when Anna was working as a senior reservation manager at the Wheatley Hotel in Massachusetts. At that moment, she was married to Marcus O'Neill, who was employed there as well. Brian was among the hotel's guests, and he was immediately taken by the attractive young woman. The fact that Anna was already married did not deter Walsh in the slightest. He began to show her attention that grew increasingly insistent. Accustomed to getting his way from a young age and not one to accept refusal, he began to pursue Anna relentlessly. He managed to obtain her phone number and even her home address, where she lived with her husband, turning their lives into an absolute nightmare. In 2015, the O'Neills found themselves compelled to ask the police for protection against Brian's incessant harassment, which persisted day and night. He constantly sought out Anna, called her at work, sent messages to her personal phone, and demanded she divorce her husband to be with him. The situation escalated when Walsh threatened to harm Anna and her husband if she did not leave with him. What happened next remains unclear, including why Anna eventually changed her mind. However, a year after seeking police protection from Walsh, she unexpectedly divorced her husband. Moreover, a few months later, Brian became her second officially wedded husband. The newlyweds settled in a luxurious home in Cohasset, Massachusetts, located about 20 miles southeast of Boston, in an upscale and well-appointed neighborhood. In this marriage, they welcomed 3 sons in quick succession. The boys were born a couple of years apart, and at the time of their mother's disappearance, they were 6, 4, and 2 years old. Anna did not consider taking maternity leave and successfully juggled work with motherhood, continuing her upward career trajectory. She assumed the position of regional general manager at Tishman Speyer, a real estate company, where she earned a high salary and effectively became the primary breadwinner for the family. As her job frequently took her to Washington, D.C., she also purchased another home there, registered in her name, where she stayed during business trips. During these times, she relied on visiting nannies to help care for her children. The fraud case against Brian Walsh. What was the head of this large family doing while his wife was both expanding their family and building her career? Brian was unemployed. The $1 million he had once taken from his father was dwindling, and everything his wife acquired was wisely registered in her name. Brian was actively seeking effortless income sources. Before marrying Anna, Brian had spent some time in South Korea, where he befriended a very wealthy individual whose family owned an impressive art collection. Upon returning to the United States, Walsh maintained this connection, and his friend unexpectedly asked for his help in selling several paintings by the iconic artist Andy Warhol. Brian eagerly agreed, but decided not just to sell the artworks for a commission, but to truly profit from the transaction. He had access to a series of abstract paintings by the great artist, collectively titled Shadows. He appraised each painting, obtained the necessary documentation, including authenticity certificates, and then decided to create copies of both the images and the accompanying documents. Walsh approached artists who made precise replicas of the paintings. He convinced the artists that he needed these copies as a backup, since each of the original works was worth about $250,000. For several years, the fraudster successfully copied and sold fake paintings as originals to collectors from various countries, until one of his buyers, an art expert specializing in Andy Warhol's work, quickly identified a forgery and sued the fraudster. The FBI took on the investigation, and in April 2021, the suspect pleaded guilty to selling counterfeit art. He was placed under house arrest after his lawyer negotiated a deal, requiring him to return the proceeds from the sale of the paintings to the buyers to avoid actual prison time. Brian's movements were significantly restricted, but he was allowed to leave his house. Twice a day, he could drive his children to and from their educational institutions. Additionally, he had 2.5 hours in the morning to visit stores, pharmacies, dry cleaners, and a few other places in his area to purchase necessities. The list of these places was limited and approved in an official document. The mysterious disappearance of Mrs. Walsh. On December 31, 2022, the Walsh family was preparing to ring in the new year together in the comfort of their home. Present were just the spouses and their 3 sons. Due to their young ages, the boys went to bed early, leaving Anna and Brian at the dinner table. That day, Anna made her last post on social media, extending her greetings and noting ambiguously that the year had been challenging. But she and her husband remained united. Anna was scheduled to fly to Washington, D.C. for work on January 3rd, but on January 4th, her employer, Tishman Speyer, reported her missing to the police. She had failed to show up for work, missed closing a crucial deal, and her phone had been unreachable for several days. Independently of Speyer's actions, her husband also reported her missing, expressing his concern that he had been unable to contact her for several days. According to Brian, he last saw Anna on January 1st. He claimed she woke him up early in the morning, saying that there were some issues at work, and her boss had requested her to come in earlier than planned. After that, Mr. Walsh believed his wife headed to the airport with just a few belongings. However, inconsistencies in the case soon emerged. Firstly, Anna hadn't purchased, changed, or reserved a flight ticket for January 1st, nor had she canceled her flight scheduled for January 3rd. Secondly, she didn't appear at the airport on either January 1st or 3rd. Thirdly, how did she leave the house? Her personal car was still in the garage, and she hadn't called for a taxi. Brian suggested she might have hitchhiked, but this theory sounded far from convincing. Brian's statements and behavior raised many questions. His accounts were inconsistent, and he didn't seem particularly troubled by the unfolding events. Unable to contact the mother of his children for more than 3 days, he only reported her missing on the 4th day, and only after her workplace called. Investigation and arrest of the suspect. From the outset, Mr. Walsh was considered a primary suspect, yet law enforcement lacked sufficient grounds for his arrest or a warrant to search their family home. They conducted only a cursory inspection with the homeowner's permission, which yielded nothing. Brian claimed he had been living a normal life during those 3 days, visiting usual stores and tending to household chores. However, verifying his claims proved difficult. Whenever he left the house, he forgot his phone, which, according to him, was often taken without permission by his older children to play games. On January 5th, the police made a public appeal through television, displaying a photo of Anna and requesting anyone with information about her whereabouts or fate to immediately contact law enforcement. Yet, no witnesses came forward. The last time Anna was known to have made calls was to her mother and sister on December 31st, making her husband the last known person to have seen her. Surveillance camera footage from the neighborhood provided no leads. Anna was not captured on any cameras on the morning of January 1st, as if she had never left her home. On the contrary, her husband was recorded leaving and returning several times, but it was impossible to determine his destinations. Walsh's claim of a supermarket visit was debunked. His vehicle wasn't seen on any footage en route, nor was he spotted in the store. It wasn't until January 8th that Brian was arrested for providing false statements and taken in for questioning at the station, while his home was finally searched. It was discovered that on January 1st, he had gone to a hardware store in a different area, not on the list of approved locations he could visit under house arrest conditions. There, he spent nearly $500 on a significant quantity of cleaning supplies, plastic sheeting, duct tape, a mop with a bucket, and utility rags. He paid in cash, presumably hoping his visit would go unnoticed. Horrifying discoveries in the family home. During the search, at first glance, nothing out of the ordinary or suspicious was found in the home. Everything was in its place, with no signs of struggle or bloodstains detected. However, when law enforcement descended into the basement, there was no longer any doubt. This was the scene of a gruesome crime. There, smeared bloodstains were visible everywhere, and among the old clutter, a bloodied knife and saw wrapped in towels were hidden. Previously, Walsh had admitted that on January 3rd he visited his mother's home, located on the other side of town. He claimed he had violated his house arrest conditions because his mother needed help with household tasks due to her deteriorating health. But after the grim discoveries in the basement, police suspected that on his way, the man could have disposed of evidence or parts of his deceased wife's body. All the trash bins in the area where the spouses lived, as well as along the route to his mother's house, were inspected. These searches yielded results, and in one of them, a kitchen hatchet with traces of dried blood and several blood-stained towels, similar to those found in the Walsh's basement, were discovered. Forensic analysis confirmed that the blood in the basement, on the towels, knife, hatchet, and saw, belonged to the missing Anna, dispelling any remaining doubts about her demise. Search history reveals chilling intent. Police seized a laptop belonging to Mr. Walsh, as well as a tablet owned by the couple's eldest son from the Walsh residence. The search history on these devices left investigators in disbelief. Weeks before his wife's disappearance, Brian was actively searching online for information about the most favorable states for divorce in terms of property division. He also sought information on whether he could lay claim to the second home in Washington, D.C., owned by Anna and registered solely in her name, thereby uncovering a possible motive for the crime. Regarding the tablet, the first query made around 4 in the morning on January 1st was, how long does it take for a body to start decomposing? This was followed by nearly 24 searches on how to dispose of a body, how to clean up blood traces, how to dismember a body, whether a body could be identified if the teeth were removed, how long DNA traces last, and whether a person could be charged with a crime if the body was never found. All this information was searched on his young child's tablet, the child of the woman he mercilessly dealt with. By January 3rd, Brian was already searching How and when can someone inherit the property of a person who has disappeared? Clearly, he was confident he would evade punishment and was preparing to claim the inheritance. Charges and trial. On January 18th, Brian was formally charged with the murder of his wife, despite the fact that her body or any remains had not been found. Prosecutors believe that on the night of January 1st, Brian intentionally or accidentally took his wife's life and then decided to dispose of her body by dismembering it in the basement of their home. He then packaged the body parts in plastic and over the following days discarded them in trash bins across different parts of the city. The area around the Walsh residence, as well as within a couple of kilometers, was thoroughly examined for evidence. Nearby wastelands, wooded areas, and bodies of water were also searched, but these efforts yielded no results. The defendant himself pleaded not guilty and refused to disclose what he had done with the body. Additionally, it was revealed that Anna had been feeling unhappy lately and had even considered divorcing her husband. She mentioned this several times during phone conversations with her mother and sister. The day before she disappeared, she called her mother, asking her to fly from Serbia for a few days. However, her mother apparently did not take her daughter's words seriously and decided to postpone her visit. The trial of Brian Walsh is ongoing. The accused is currently being held at the Norfolk Correctional Facility, awaiting his next court date. Anna's mother has been following the investigation from her home, as she has not traveled to the United States. The Serbian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has contacted the consulate in New York, which in turn has been in touch with the Norfolk District Attorney's Office to ensure that Anna's mother is timely informed about the investigation and hearings. As for the Walsh's 3 sons, they are now under state custody. None of Brian's family members wish to take care of them, citing Anna's mother's age and poor health, and her sister, who currently lives in Canada, also declined to take in her nephews. Only Anna's close friend, Pamela Barden, has expressed willingness to take the boys in, preferring that over them being separated and placed in different foster homes. For the Halbach family, a reminder that nightmares can filter into reality. For Teresa Halbach, October 31st, 2005 was another day at the office. As a freelance photographer working for Auto Trader magazine at the time, she received a call to shoot a few photos at the Avery's Auto Salvage. She was never seen again. First reported as a missing person on November 3rd, 2005, a large-scale search began for Teresa. On the afternoon of November 5th, 2005, her Toyota RAV4 SUV was found partially concealed in Avery's salvage yard. Investigators later discovered blood in the vehicle. Charred bone fragments and teeth were also found in a burn pit on the same property. Her car keys were in the room of the property owner, Stephen Avery. Born on March 22, 1980, Teresa was one of 5 siblings. Her parents, Richard and Karen, raised her on the family dairy farm. When she was 8 years old, her father sadly passed away. Karen eventually remarried Richard's brother, Thomas, and together they raised their blended family. Teresa was an outdoorsy girl who aspired to work for National Geographic as a photojournalist. Friends described her as having an uncanny ability to make everyone feel welcomed. She was dedicated to her studies, making summa cum laude with a degree in photography. After graduating from the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay, Teresa continued her work with Pierce Photography, whom she interned with during her college days. She started her own business, Photography by Teresa, and operated out of the Pierce studio. She traveled extensively, and to supplement her income, she took on freelance jobs for Auto Trader magazine, taking pictures of vehicles that were put up for sale. It was this job that led to her untimely death. All the evidence found pointed to one person, Stephen Avery. Avery had contacted Teresa to set up an appointment to take pictures of his sister's minivan. According to records, she was last seen at 2:30 p.m. that afternoon. This was later confirmed by Stephen's nephew, Bobby, who told police he saw the car enter the salvage yard. Avery was initially charged with a weapons violation as a convicted felon. On November 11, 2005, he was formally charged with the murder of Teresa, kidnapping, sexual assault, and mutilation of a corpse. The blood found in the SUV proved a positive match for Avery's. A set of car keys belonging to Teresa found in Avery's room. All the while, Avery maintained his innocence, alleging the police were trying to frame him. He was in the middle of a civil lawsuit with Manitowoc County for $36 million. Stephen Avery, born July 9, 1962, is a Manitowoc County native, raised in Wisconsin alongside his two brothers, Charles and Earl, and sister Barbara by parents Dolores and Alan. He dropped out of high school with reports suggesting he had an IQ of 70. Stephen was no stranger to the law. In 1981, he served 10 months in jail following the burglary of a bar. A year later, he pleaded guilty to animal cruelty after pouring gasoline on his pet cat and tossing it into a bonfire. For this, he served another 9 months. In 1985, he threatened his cousin Sharon Morris by forcing her off the road and thereafter pointing a gun at her. He later alleged that he wanted her to stop spreading rumors. She'd filed a report alleging that he exposed himself on several occasions and was masturbating in the front yard. Although he received a 6-year sentence for his crime, he was granted bail and released. However, it was a case of mistaken identity that had him locked away for nearly 2 decades. Penny Bjornston reported that she'd been walking along a beach near 2 rivers when she was attacked and assaulted on July 29, 1985. Police believed the description she gave had a striking resemblance to Avery. She went on to choose his photo during an interview with police and later picked him out during a suspect lineup. He was arrested and charged with the attack on Bjornston. A state-appointed forensic official claimed that a hair found on Avery's shirt was consistent with the victim's. This evidence led to his conviction in December 1985. All this despite a staggering 16 witness testimonies and a time-stamped receipt to prove his whereabouts at the time of the assault. Stephen was convicted of rape and attempted murder and sentenced to 32 years in prison. Avery maintained his innocence and appealed in both 1987 and 1996. Both appeals were denied by the higher court. In 2001, though, Stephen made contact with the Wisconsin Innocence Project. The organization took on the case, and in 2002, Stephen was exonerated after DNA evidence proved he was innocent. It was later learned that another man, Gregory Allen, committed the crime and did, in fact, confess to it in 1995. Deputies alleged that Sheriff Deputy Thomas Kokorek received a call and said, "We already have the right guy, don't concern yourself with it." Allen and Steve bore a striking resemblance. Allen also committed a similar crime in the same area that Bjornston was attacked and was under police surveillance, but he was not considered a suspect. Allen was not even called up as a suspect in the lineup. After 18 years, Stephen walked out a free man on September 11, 2003. He then went to file a civil lawsuit against former Sheriff Thomas Kokorek and former District Attorney Dennis Vogel to the tune of $36 million. His freedom, however, wouldn't last long. When Teresa was reported missing, searches were conducted in the salvage yard. This was the place she had last been seen, as confirmed by Stephen's nephew, Bobby Gassi. Stephen claimed that he'd spoken to Teresa when she came by to take the photos, and then she left. Apart from the bone fragments, SUV, car keys, and blood found in the car, a bullet with Teresa's DNA was discovered in the garage. While incarcerated for Teresa's murder, Stephen's lawsuit was settled in February 2006, and he was paid a mere $400,000. While in jail, Stephen's younger nephew, Brendan Dassey, was also questioned in relation to the murder. Brendan, who was 16 years old at the time of the murder, was interrogated by police without parental supervision or a lawyer being present. Brendan confessed to investigators that he and Stephen first assaulted Teresa before murdering her. They then burned her body to destroy evidence. "I go down to put Albufeira, Tadeo, Potter, where? Alith, so." He was charged in March 2006 as an accessory to the murder. He later recanted his statement, claiming that he'd been coerced by detectives. Brendan was charged with the same crimes as Stephen, although there was no physical evidence linking him to the crime scene. Stephen was convicted in March 2007 and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Later that same year, Brendan too was found guilty and given a life sentence with the possibility of parole in 2048. But there was not to be a cut-and-dry solution to the murder. The conviction sparked controversy. It was a sensational case. Stephen was the first of the Innocent Project's 174 exonerated convicts to be charged with a violent crime after being released. This caught the interest of aspiring filmmakers Laura Ricciardi and Moira Demos. Making a Murderer premiered on Netflix in 2015 and created a media maelstrom. The documentary, which took 10 years to research and produce, profiled the case of Steven Avery. The series chronicles the case timeline, beginning with Steven's wrongful conviction in 1985 and subsequent exoneration, civil lawsuit against the Manitowoc County, and the arrest of Steven and Brendan in regard to the murder of Teresa Halbach. It received both praise and criticism from critics and those directly involved with Teresa's case. The story caused on an international level has driven to division in public opinion. A petition to have Steven and Brendan pardoned was drawn up and sent to the White House. It garnered over 128,000 signatures, but still failed to make any impact. The White House stated, as the convictions were made in a state court, the president had no authority to pardon either defendant. There are those who firmly support the innocence of Steven and Brendan. These include his immediate family, who have supported him and also pray for the real killer of Teresa to be found. Sandy Greenman, Steven's ex-fiancée, is one such person. Greenman has been his avid supporter, going as far as to start a Facebook page to garner support and give exposure to the case. She described him as a model inmate. Greenman stated that people take a perverse pleasure in tainting Steven's name. People like to say Steven Avery has been violent all his life, which is not true, she said. Most notably, though, was the support offered by Kim Kardashian. The socialite has been using her influence to advocate for a fair justice system. Having come across the case on a social media site, her interest was piqued. Although she has made appeals to the governor, even her level of influence has no sway. However, she hasn't given up and hopes to seek justice for both Steven and Brendan. The other half feels Steven is where he belongs. On that side of the coin is Jody Stokowski, another ex-fiancée. Jody initially pledged her support in Steven's innocence during the documentary. Afterwards, she alleged that she had lied and it was all an act. Jody went on to explain to Nancy Grace in an interview that he threatened to kill her and her family.
The first thing I want to ask you is, do you believe Steven Avery killed Teresa Halbach? Yes, I do. Why? Because he threatened to kill me and my family and a friend of mine.
He alleged that he wanted revenge on all women after his life was wrongfully stolen from him. Steven is the one person I can't trust. He's a monster, she said. The show also ignited a debate regarding the perspective covered by the documentary. For the supporters of Steven and Brendan, they feel the points most significant to the trial were highlighted. Dean Strang, one of Steven's attorneys, agreed that the documentary covered enough to give the public a chance to judge for themselves. He disagreed that the series was subjective. As for the relatives of Teresa, they say the show saddened them. The Halbachs stated the show sought to entertain and seek profit from their loss. Teresa's aunt, Kay Giordana, and cousin-in-law, Jeremy Fournier, both stated that the show was one-sided. Former Calumet County District Attorney Ken Krantz alleges he was not given a chance to tell his side of the story. The filmmakers denied this and claimed that he refused to give an interview. In an interview with People magazine, Krantz alleges the documentary has left out key pieces of evidence. These include Steven using a fake name when calling Teresa, DNA belonging to Steven was found on the SUV's hood latch, and a ballistics report showed that the bullet found in the garage was fired from a rifle owned by Steven. Krantz further alleges that prior to her murder, Teresa had once before made a trip to the Avery residence. When Steven answered the door with only a towel on, she said she wouldn't go back because she was scared of him. In response to criticism from Krantz and other officials, the filmmakers said they'd given prosecutors the opportunity to answer questions. They believed that the documentary was a fair representation of the case and covered the most consequential evidence given during the trial. The documentary had its desired effect. It poked holes into the narrative of Steven and Brendan's case by exposing allegations of police and prosecutorial misconduct, evidence tampering, and witnessed coercion. At the outset, Stephen called out the police for trying to frame him. This to avoid the county paying out the $36 million lawsuit he filed. Stephen believed his lawsuit would be undermined if he was convicted of another violent crime. To avoid a conflict of interest, Manitowoc County gave neighboring Calumet County authority over the handling of the case. Part of the deal, however, was that Calumet could use resources which included personnel from Manitowoc. The key in Stephen's room was found by a Manitowoc sheriff's deputy after several searches of the property. Another allegation made was regarding the blood evidence found in the car. Stephen and his defense team believe it was blood used from his prior conviction. Given credence to this scenario were the claims made by the defense. According to the Avery defense team, the vial containing Stephen's blood had been tampered with and a puncture hole was visible on the stopper. The prosecution, however, combated this claim by testing the blood for a preservative not found in fresh human blood and found none. Avery's defense team brought in an expert witness who stated it was not possible to tell if the negative result meant there was none of the preservative present or the technology to test itself was inconclusive. The documentary shone a spotlight on the men of interrogation with regard to Brendan Dassey. Dassey was just 16 years old during the interrogation. Firstly, he was interviewed without the supervision of a lawyer or parent. It's understood that both he and his mother consented to the interrogation. But what piqued the interest of many was that Brendan had an IQ of 73, classifying him as intellectually challenged. Many have argued that his intellectual disability left him open to suggestion, particularly when it was shown that the Reed technique of interrogation was used. The Reed technique has been criticized for producing high rates of false confessions, especially from juveniles and the mentally impaired. The technique is used to make the suspect comfortable and eventually confess to crimes through familiarity with the interrogators. The interrogator then proceeds to tell the suspect that the evidence shows that the suspect did commit the crime. Dassey allegedly agrees with the interrogators during the interviews, but later recanted his confession. He accused his first defense team of collaborating with the prosecution to get him to confess. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it's your role. Yeah. He's also claimed that coercion was used to elicit a confession from them. Both Stephen and Brendan have appealed their convictions, but have been denied innumerable times and remain in prison. The defense teams of both men have exhausted their efforts in trying to get retrials on both men's charges. Following the Making a Murderer documentary and the public outcry regarding Stephen and Brendan's innocence, significant new developments have occurred in both their legal teams. Professors Loring Nyrider and Stephen Dreisen of the Northwestern University Center on Wrongful Convictions of Youth are representing Brendan. They too began with numerous appeals and have come up against many hurdles, but have refused to give up just yet. Meanwhile, Stephen's appointment of Kathleen Zellner has shaken up the case and given further hits to the prosecution's claims. His previous lawyers, Deem Strang and Jerry Buting, have taken their newfound fame and gone on tour to promote and bring attention to the case of Stephen Avery. Zellner, considered a trailblazing trial lawyer, has been responsible for overturning 19 wrongful convictions. Her dogged determination and careful analysis of cases has seen her uncover missing evidence that helped exonerate her clients. Most recently notable, she was a consultant for Johnny Depp and his defense team during his trial. Zellner hit the ground running once she was appointed to Stephen's defense team and firmly believes her client is innocent. One of the first things she put to rest was the alleged confession of Joseph Evans Jr. Evans alleged he was responsible for killing Teresa and trying to frame Stephen. Zellner stated that it was a not-so-subtle attempt at publicity. Previously, Evans played snitch and allegedly wrote a 9-page letter to media outlets claiming he heard Stephen confess to the murder. This time, though, it seems he wanted in on a portion of reward money to make his life in prison more comfortable. However, his claim is not gaining the traction he expected. In August 2016, Zellner filed a motion demanding new scientific testing be done. Willing to pay for the extensive testing, Zellner intended to use this evidence to prove that Stephen had been framed. The theory was that 3 different burn pits showed evidence of human remains being burned. A particularly significant find was that of a human pelvic bone fragment, a bone that was given to the Hallbachs as part of Teresa's remains. This action, claims Zellner, was proof that Teresa's remains were planted in Stephen's burn pit. The defense, however, didn't get the opportunity to test these bones as they were not disclosed to them. This was a Brady violation according to Zellner, meaning that evidence which could have helped exonerate Stephen was not disclosed in the proper manner with regards to the criminal case. Crucial evidence was just out of their reach. Zellner remained relentless in her pursuit for justice. She approached the case with a new angle, one that could potentially point to a new suspect in the case. Being unable to test the bone fragments, Zellner opted for forensic testing of the Dassey family computer. What she found on it was damning. Pornographic images of women in various stages of torture, violent images and videos depicting women as victims. All these images were allegedly accessed at times when Bobby Dassey was at home. Furthermore, Zellner pointed out that Barbara, Bobby, and Brendan's mother, along with Stephen's sister and her husband Stott Tadich, were trying to get rid of evidence that could implicate Bobby. The forensic team were able to download 2,449 pages of data from the computer to a CD-ROM to present as part of the motion for a retrial. On it were all the searches, videos, and photos accessed by Bobby. Bobby is the older brother of Brendan and the nephew of Stephen. He was also the key eyewitness for the prosecution at Stephen's trial. He alleged that he last saw Teresa going to his uncle's house, and when he returned from hunting that afternoon, did not see her or the car again. Added to these claims are the allegations of his half-brother, Brad Dassey. Brad is alleged to have said he believes his uncle is innocent. He also made claims that his stepmother, Barb, and Stephen's brother-in-law, Scott, wiped the computer, deleting all pornographic material. Allegedly, Barb has filed a harassment suit against Brad following a conversation they had about tracing deleted files from a computer, which some believe is, in part, to ensure Brad remains silent about his knowledge. For Bobby, though, the final nail in this coffin could be the evidence that exonerates Stephen, and, in turn, Brendan. An eyewitness has come forward claiming to have seen Bobby being assisted by a much older man, pushing Teresa's SUV back into the salvage yard. Thomas Sawinski stated in a sworn affidavit that he drove by Bobby and the other man while en route to deliver newspapers. When he passed the duo a second time, Bobby allegedly stepped out in front of his car to stop him. Thomas swerved to avoid him and continued on his morning route. He said that Bobby's eyes showed he was not pleased to see him there. Following the discovery of the SUV, Thomas realized the significance of the find and contacted police. He told them everything he'd seen that morning, and their response was, "We already know who did it." He provided his details, but he never heard back from them. For Zellner, this provides a contradiction to the prosecution's key witness. If proven true, which she's confident about, Bobby's testimony would be false. Zellner believes the rejection of all the crucial evidence in favor of Stephen denied him a fair chance to prove his innocence years ago. The newly filed motion is still with the appeals court and is awaiting an opinion or decision to be read over in November 2022. Stephen Avery continues to maintain his innocence. Kathleen Zellner, in her own words, says she represents the wrongfully convicted and added, "If you lie to her, she will find you out." Could Stephen be the scapegoat to a bigger conspiracy? Is this all a conspiracy to discredit Stephen's claim of improper police procedure? Or was there a monster truly hiding within Stephen all these years? Please let us know your thoughts in the comments section below.